Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Eddie Liger Power Hour. Got a great show planned for you today. We're going to talk about the French protest. We're going to talk about the idea of libertarian socialism and how that compares to Marxism, Leninism. And yeah, we're going to do it, and it's going to be green today. This is the green themed show. We got green lights in the background, green shirt. Everything's green today. So after I play our background, after I play our intro, we'll jump right into it. Thanks for being with us today. I'm excited to have a great show. Let's get it. Wow, never gets old, especially the part with MLK. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being with us. As I said earlier, got a lot to talk about today. The French protesters just within the last few days stormed the stock exchange. So hard to find a better example in the world right now of class struggle taking place directly between the working masses and the ruling capitalist class in France, which has always been sort of a financial oligarchy. We talked about this in Lenin's Imperialism with our last breakdown, in that Lenin discusses that France is one of the first countries to become dominated by finance capital, by banks and industrial capital merged together into these conglomerates, because they don't have much industry. They don't have much of a productive industrial base. They mostly just have rentier capitalists who make their money off of rent. So that's kind of the direction that the entire Western world is moving now. That's the direction the U.S. has been moving forever, towards financialization. But that's sort of always been the material conditions in France. So very, very interesting to see people rising up right now and directly challenging the shareholders like BlackRock and the stock exchange. Thank you very much, Ross, for the €5 to start the show. Love it. I love green. I love green too. When I flipped on this green today, I was like, that's the move. That's the color. And then I changed shirts because I'm like, I know exactly what shirt I want to wear, my green shirt. Yes. Eddie, did you get the video I sent you about Jesse Ventura calling out Hulk Hogan for union busting? I haven't looked at it yet, but I will definitely check that out. And I know the story somewhat, where Hulk Hogan like ratted on everyone to Vince McMahon, as the lesser paid wrestlers were trying to form a union. The WWE functions very similar to the UFC, where it's just blatant exploitation of the athletes who are literally destroying their bodies, getting beat up for a living. And recently, Stephan Bonner, legendary UFC fighter, passed away in what was almost surely an opioid related death. It's hard to say. It probably wasn't an opioid overdose. It probably had more to do with the mental health problems and the depression that Stephan Bonner would go into when he couldn't get opioids. He took multiple videos of himself outside of the hospitals, yelling at nurses and hospital staff for not giving him opioids, and they just turn him away, send him away to drink alcohol or do whatever alternative to the opioids he can find on the streets, and ultimately it led to his death. And it's crazy that even MMA fighters in this society, even successful MMA fighters, can't get freaking health insurance, or they can't get health care, they can't get addiction care or rehab. What up, Eddie? What's the status on the Voosh debate? I don't know. I haven't heard back from him. I have not heard back. Maybe I'm just not patrolling my Twitter mentions enough. We've got a bunch of Ukraine bots in our Twitter mentions right now, as per usual. But I don't know. I haven't heard back from him. I said, yes, let's do the debate. And then he said, wait. Are you one guy or are you two guys? Like asking if it's me or me and Carlos. I don't know. Maybe he's scared of Carlos. And I said, we're a collective Midwestern Marx, but Eddie Liger is part of the collective, and let's do the debate. And he hasn't responded yet. So maybe he's scared. Maybe he's running. In the words of Nick Diaz, don't be scared, homie. We live in hell. No, we don't. We live in capitalism. Professional skateboarders don't get health care. How crazy is that? That is crazy. Vouch. We all know he would just talk over you and call you reactionary, and he could actually debate your stance. Yeah, but I wouldn't let him talk over me. I would sit there and make my points, even if I had to yell at him. I don't blame him for being scared of Carlos. Yeah, I don't blame him for being scared of anybody who's intellectually honest. Because when you're intellectually dishonest, when you work backwards from your conclusions, it's constantly terrifying that you're going to get exposed. Right? If you don't know what you're talking about, if you don't gather evidence first and then draw conclusions from the evidence, the dialectical materialist method, and instead you just give the U.S. State Department line verbatim, regardless of what the evidence shows and regardless of the holes in the line of the U.S. State Department, you're always scared that somebody's going to poke through those holes and somebody's going to expose your fraudulency. So that could possibly be Voosh. Speaking of something much more important than Voosh, hey, Eddie, I work in the union side of construction in the Midwest. I've been listening to your videos and recently listened to Black Shirts and Reds on Audible. Been learning a lot and wanted to thank you. Very cool. That is awesome. I hope that the videos and the content are helpful in organizing your workplace. Yeah, I know there are a lot of like union members scattered throughout the Midwest who are members of CPUSA, the Communist Party. There are a lot who are politically active, but there are a lot who aren't. And there are a lot of workers who don't even understand really how to use their union or what their union can give them. So there's a lot to be done in unionized workplaces in terms of organizing. So very cool that we have a construction worker and a union worker learning from our content. Much love. So let's check out what's going on in France right now. Now, I don't know if the stock exchange building is the same building as the BlackRock headquarters, because there were reports that the protesters stormed the BlackRock headquarters and they were lighting off flares inside. And then a few days later, there were reports that the protesters were storming the stock exchange. So I don't know what the difference between the two buildings is, or if this was two separate events. But either way, this comes a few days after we got another video of them storming some high-dollar fundraiser and eating the people's food and pouring the rich people's wine into a glass and passing it out to all the protesters. So just a blatant example of class struggle, direct struggle between the working masses and the ruling capitalist class. And it's clear that the French protesters understand who the capitalist class is. More accurately, who the ruling class is, who's actually in control of the government, who's actually pushing for this pension reform, who's actually been cutting benefits for the French workers for the last however many years, which has culminated and led to this uprising, these protests. So pretty crazy stuff here, but I mean, the French people have always been fairly revolutionary. Obviously, the French Revolution famously happened there, but I remember we had a bunch of foreign exchange students at the place where Carlos and I got our undergraduate degrees in college. And one of the French foreign exchange students asked me, like, do you like what our people, I'm not even going to try and do the French accent. He asked me, do you like how often our people protest our government and how hard we go when we protest the government and the capitalist class? And Carlos and I were like, yes, very much so. So that was cool. But like I said, France forever was one of the, or has been a financial oligarchy, one of the first countries to be captured by finance capital, to be captured by the bankers, merged with industrial capitalists. Lenin talks about this in Imperialism. They haven't had much of a productive or much of an industrial base. So it's been a lot of rentier capitalists, a lot of landlords, a lot of bankers, finance capitalists who make their money off trapping people in debt and charging them interest or renting land. And this is part of the reason, those are part of the material conditions that have led to a very revolutionary people who aren't afraid to go to the stock exchange and start lighting shit on fire. If the government starts doing things like raising the retirement age without having people vote on it democratically. And, ultimately, I just wish the Western protesters, I wish other Western countries would have the balls of the French protesters. Like, imagine if this was going on in the UK, the US, Germany, and France right now. All the NATO countries who are continuing to neglect their own people in favor of sending more and more weapons, more and more money, more and more strategic support to Ukraine to wage this proxy war against Russia. As inflation gets out of control, as there's a cost of living crisis, as people can't afford to heat their homes in Europe, our government is sucking money, like 40% of your paycheck, out through taxes and just funneling it right to Ukraine, funneling it right to this proxy war. And apparently, France is the only place where the working class is willing to rise up and do something about it. The working masses understand who's pushing for this proxy war, or they understand who's pushing for neoliberalism, I should say. And they're going directly to the source. They're attacking capitalism at its foundations by attacking the shareholders. And I don't know what's going to come of this in France. I don't know if things are going to escalate or if they're going to simmer down. But if this was going on all across Europe and all across North America, it would be a lot more powerful. It would be an international movement against finance capital, which is international. Obviously, BlackRock has a headquarters in Paris, and they have headquarters in New York, right? So what if American workers were outside the BlackRock headquarters in New York at the same time that these French protesters were outside BlackRock in Paris? I don't know, something to think about. Maybe that's something we should get organized here soon. Maybe that's something Midwestern Marx should spearhead. But either way, it's great to see this just natural class struggle boiling up in response to neoliberalism. But it's class struggle that we need to see internationally. We can't do shit via protests in 2023. They just look cool, right? Like, no offense to anybody organizing protests, right? And protests are good. Protests are important. Sometimes I feel like the protests need to be more focused on class and class struggle rather than, social issues or tailing the Democrats. But whatever. Protests are good. It's nice when you can get people organized, expressing their opinions politically, right? But it's never going to lead to change. Right? Just a protest, the government's never going to see that unless it's like a general strike and decide to change things. Right? Look at what's happening in the Netherlands with the Dutch farmers. Look at the farmers' protests in India. Look at what's going on in France. In order to even get minor reforms and minor concessions out of the government, you basically have to go to the precipice of revolution. You have to go so hard. Like in all these countries, they've been stealing tractors. They've been pushing back the police. They've been storming the stock exchange, storming government buildings, lighting things on fire. Essentially, like I said, threatening revolution in order to get minor reforms, or in some cases, like in France, the government went ahead with the pension reforms. They went ahead and raised the retirement age, despite the workers basically threatening to burn down the stock exchange. So my point being that the protests aren't going to be enough, right? Protests need to evolve. Protests need to escalate into real organized forms of class struggle that really threaten corporate power, that really threaten capital. When you go to the stock exchange and when you have union workers in the stock exchange and they're lighting things on fire and they're lighting flares and they're singing revolutionary songs, right? That makes the ruling class crap their pants because you're threatening their capital. You're threatening what matters. Like when the Alabama coal miners went to New York and protested outside of BlackRock HQ, very similar thing, because they were consistently being lied to by the company, having their benefits and wages cut. So they went to the source of the problem. They went to the shareholders who owned the company that they worked for. It's like United Mine something. And eventually they got concessions. They also went on strike and withheld their labor. But that combined with the protest was able to get them a better deal, negotiate them a better deal with the boss. So we need, I guess, not just more intense protests or more intensified forms of class struggle, but also a multi-pronged approach, right? Like what got those mining workers a better contract was the fact that they went on strike, they withheld their labor, and they went and basically did a super intense version of a protest in front of the BlackRock HQ. So if like we were threatening a general strike, if all these protests were going on internationally, like I said, if the unions were involved in every country, and if there was more unionization in general in the US, we would have more power over the capitalists. The working class would have more leverage. But that's what we're progressing towards, I think. Look, we have 76 people in this live stream already. We have thousands of people watching Midwestern Marx videos, learning how to organize their workplace, learning how to organize their community, learning how to educate people about theory and educate people about the capitalist class, and therefore how to attack capitalism at its foundations. Right? People are learning the importance of going right to the stock exchange because the shareholders are the ones who control every aspect of your life and the economy. And the class struggle is progressing as this happens, as workers raise their political consciousness, as they get more active in workplaces and communities, as we come together and build communities like this based on collective struggle and revolution. Things are going to intensify, things are going to heat up. And it's good to keep an eye on what's going on around the world, because any struggle against the capitalist class in the current stage of capitalism, which is globalized imperialist capitalism, any class struggle against it is going to need to be internationalist. We're going to need to band together with the working masses of other countries who we have more in common with than the bourgeoisie of our own countries, for the most part. Happy birthday to Len. Woo! Thank you for the $20 super chat, Sam Dixon. I'll consider that like a gift from Lenin, posthumously from the grave. I didn't even know it was his birthday, but happy birthday to Vladimir Lenin, legendary revolutionary theorist and leader. I hope all of you are well and enjoy your Catterday. Saturday, but for cats. Insert photo of Lenin with cat. Yeah, that's one of my favorite photos. I have it saved on my computer in my favorites because I use it for thumbnails all the time. But here's the famous picture of Lenin with a cat. Can't beat it. This has got to be one of the greatest pictures taken in all of history, human history, honestly. Elon is making it so much harder on Twitter too. Actually, we are going to cover a story about this today. And thanks again for the $20 super chat, Sam. Couldn't do what we do without you. couldn't have our published works without the support of you guys. I wouldn't have this camera and microphone without the financial support of our super chatters and members. So appreciate it. There's a colorized version, is there? That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, we were talking about, or I have a plan today to cover censorship because Mint Press News just released a new article about TikTok and about the State Department officials and CIA officials who TikTok is bringing on to manage their content, as the government is threatening to ban TikTok because apparently it's controlled by the Communist Party of China. But we'll jump to that pretty soon here. Have you seen the Dylan Burns response video to you? Oh, God, I didn't know he made one. I got Vaush and Dylan Burns on me in 2 days. Those are like the worst people on Twitch that I've attracted within the last 2 days. I was so happy when I finally had a viral video, or I had a video blow up responding to Philip DeFranco and exposing his lies about Ukraine. But now I've attracted the worst NATO stooges on the internet. They're so mad at me. I actually made a video directly calling out Dylan Burns and being like, what? The video he posted was so dumb. It was some guy at a protest against U.S. interventionism in China and U.S. interventionism and meddling in Taiwan. And there's just this guy going around being obnoxious, asking people, how much are you paid? How much are you paid to be here? And the people tell him, like, nothing. And then the guy's like, sure, sure, sure. And then he leaves. And Dylan Burns was like, oh, this guy owned the Chinese. This guy owned the anti-war protesters. Like, this is just a guy being obnoxious. And then he asks people if they're paid to be there, and they all tell him no. I'll look at his response at some point. I don't care enough right now. We already responded to Voosh this week, you know. There's only so many brain cells that we can lose on this stream within a week. Thank you so much for the super chat, though. Everything I said for Sam Dixon, copy and paste it for you. Couldn't do what we do at Midwestern Marks without y'all. Here's more for the Lennon birthday fund. Thank you, Molly McGuire. Y'all are too kind, giving our project all this financial support. We're going to grow exponentially here at Midwestern Marks with great followers like y'all. So thank you, Molly. Glad you could make the stream today. Thank you for always being a consistent supporter of what we do. Much love. Dylan Burns is basically Leafy. Like, Leafy is here. That guy who would just play video games and tell stories. What NGOs do you think funds the Voosh sauce? I don't know. I just know if he's State Department connected, like a lot of people think he is, that's probably how. It's probably through an NGO or a political think tank with some name, like the Freedom and Democracy for a Better America Fund. And they're probably doing it under the table because, I mean, that's why the NED and these things like Bellingcat and these private arms of the U.S. State Department had to become a thing under Ronald Reagan in the 90s, especially, 80s and 90s, especially under Reagan in the 80s and then continuing into the 90s. I mean, because people were catching on to the CIA and what the CIA was doing, and the fact that the CIA was an armed body of the state used to overthrow other governments and foment coups and, you know, see U.S. interests carried out and protected abroad. And people were realizing what the CIA had done in Nicaragua with arming and funding the Contras, things like that. And the State Department needed someone or something to do what the CIA was doing, but be more covert about it and not be directly attached to the State Department. So that's where you get the NED, a lot of NGOs, which can then be funneled money through the NED and through USAID. And then they can give money, act as an intermediary, take that money and give it to the U.S.'s preferred interest. That's how most of the 2014 coup in Ukraine was done. It's been a well-known fact forever that there are many pro-U.S. State Department NGOs in Ukraine So that is how Victoria Nuland, Jeffrey Pyatt, and all the people who directly oversaw the coup were able to funnel money into their preferred political groups. They did it through these NGOs, and they did it with millions and millions of dollars, which was admitted by Victoria Nuland. And yet people like Dylan Burns and Vaush will still tell us that's a conspiracy theory. Eddie, I'm done editing. Very cool. I'll check it out after this stream, Sandeep. I'm very pumped to see what you got. Thank you so much for doing that. Can't wait to see the final product. I've been working with a couple editors lately to try and up our production value here at Midwestern Marks. So, yeah, look forward to that. Happy birthday, Lennon. Thank you so much, Cellar Door. Both a YouTube member and a super chatter. I got to get you YouTube members Carlos's Purity Fetish and the Crisis of Western Marxism. I've been planning to release that on Patreon this week, as well as for YouTube members. We want to give you all the ebook just so as many people read it as possible, and to, of course, encourage people to join the Patreon or become YouTube members, but also to reward y'all and give y'all something for your consistent financial support. So thank you so much. And of course, it would be impossible, like I said earlier, to do these print works, to do things like the Purity Fetish and the Crisis of Western Marxism, the Journals of American Socialist Studies, without you all. All of this is paid for by the followers, the fans, the comrades of Midwestern Marx. So yeah, love it. I unfortunately have to run to the bathroom before the next part of the stream. Otherwise, my bladder's going to burst. I don't want to leave because we've got a good amount of people in the stream right now, and I don't want to lose you all. So stay with us. Bear with me. I'm going to be back to answer your questions, engage with the chat, and react to some videos in about 3 minutes. I'm going to speed to the bathroom, and I'm going to give you all something to watch. You can watch me wrestle some guy. Who do you want to watch me wrestle? Here you go. Here's a good match. I'll be right back, everyone. Stay tuned. Oh, of course it lagged right when I switched it over. I freaking hate trying to play Matt Boss on stream. I'm back already, y'all. I told you it wouldn't be long. Look, we didn't lose anyone either. Incredible. Incredible. The people must like the wrestling matches, huh? That guy was pretty good, actually. Oh, there we go. We lost like 6 people. Libertarian socialism seems to somehow be more sincere anarcho-NATOism. Yes, that's kind of the point I'm going to make today. I know I said I want to be done talking about Voosh, but I actually have another Voosh clip from when he was debating Charlie Kirk, because it gives us a great example of what libertarian socialism is all about and its failures. So Yeah, but first I want to talk about, well, at some point we should talk about the Gray Zone article that just came out from Kit Clarenberg, talking about how the CIA, or two of the 9/11 hijackers, were CIA recruits. I don't know if that's going to get me banned or censored or what, but we got to talk about that at some point. But first, I kind of wanted to discuss what's going on TikTok, because Kyle Kulinski covered this. That was Kyle Kulinski covered this. A lot of cuz there. I called on like Kyle Kulinski, Jimmy Dore, and it's totally possible that they didn't see it. But when our 7th TikTok account got banned, I asked all these social democrats, all these people who claim to support free speech and the First Amendment and be against government censorship, I asked them to help us out, to boost the Midwestern Marks YouTube channel or Twitch or whatever, so we could transition our audience off TikTok. And other than the Revolutionary Blackout Network and a handful of others on Twitter, there weren't that many people who covered the censorship of Marxism, the censorship of our account with almost 400,000 followers on TikTok. But when Marianne Williamson gets censored twice, Kyle was all over it. So this just goes to show, like Ben Shapiro, Kyle Kulinski, all these people who say they support free speech, it's really only, I mean, Kyle will cover sometimes when conservatives are censored and stuff, just to try and show that he's unbiased. But really, we only get up in arms about free speech when it's our side, when it's our preferred political movement that's being censored. But either way, this is still interesting that two Marianne Williamson accounts were blowing up and they immediately get censored here. So Kyle's commentary about it is pretty interesting. Obviously, he's not as familiar with TikTok as I am. I've been on the app forever, so I feel like I can give some good insight here into what he's talking about. And him and Crystal Ball should have me on their show to talk about this. Wink, wink.
I mean, look, I think this is pretty big news, and it's pretty astonishing, if you ask me, that this is happening. But TikTok moderators have now banned at least two pretty prominent Marianne Williamson supporter accounts. One of them is called Marianne Williamson for Prez, P-R-E-Z, and another one is called Lefty Takeover. And these accounts have tens of thousands of followers, no terms of service violations, but were spammed by Biden supporters match reporting them. So basically, this is like the Biden team. What a coincidence. This happened like the same week that article came out, which explained, hey man, Marianne is taking off on TikTok.
Yep.
Like she's getting really, really solid views. And then I
Of course she is. Anybody who calls out the establishment, anybody who calls out the status quo, anybody who criticizes capitalism blows up on TikTok, because the algorithm doesn't prefer accounts with a lot of subscribers or with a lot of accumulated audience already. It's more of a meritocracy. Like anybody can blow up on TikTok. An account with 0 followers can get a video with millions of views. It happens all the time. So when people talk about anti-capitalism, anti-imperialism, there's a ton of people who latch onto that because that message is suppressed in TV and in other forms of entertainment. So like I've had videos just explaining like Marxist concepts from deep within Capital Volume 1 about wages and profit and surplus value, and it'll get like thousands of views on TikTok. People are desperate for revolutionary education. So anytime revolutionary education is able to slip through the cracks of censorship, it blows up. But then eventually you get censored, you get banned, your stuff gets taken down, and your accounts get taken down, partially because of all the Democrats on the app who will work together to get you taken down, which is, I guarantee you that is what happened to Marianne Williamson, as she got attacked by Demtalk, by Biden's strongest warriors online.
Saw another breakdown in a phenomenal Twitter thread. I wish I remember who did it, but it's real. Like there's actual real grassroots support for her among the mostly young people.
Yep.
And it looks like, now here's a good question. Do you think this is really like grassroots Biden supporters, or is it like, like a paid team of hacks? Because I think it's much more likely it's the latter and not the former.
So it's both. It's both. You do have people who are directly working with the Democratic Party on TikTok, and they're pretty prominent. Usually they won't lie about it, though, right? But there's also a lot of people who are on hashtag DemTalk, DemTok, DemTalk, who love to mass report and get people taken down and get people banned for talking about the war in Ukraine or criticizing Joe Biden or whatever else. Like that guy Dinesh, who got one of our accounts banned by lying about us, blatantly lying about what we were saying about Iran, right? And weaponizing people's compassion, saying that I was denying that young girls were being killed or being tortured or oppressed in Iran, when that had nothing to do with what I was even talking about. But then DemTalk, all these people who spend too much time online in these social groups, they see this, they see, oh, we're canceling someone today. Okay, let me jump on board. Let me make a video about this person. Let me go report this person. So you might have people with millions of followers or hundreds of thousands of followers who are working with the Democratic Party, and they'll sort of put a target on someone's back, right? They'll say, look at how evil this person is. Everybody do something about it. But then there are a bunch of real people, a bunch of smaller accounts, part of DemTalk, who spend too much time on TikTok, who will come mass report you, leave hate comments, and get people to take your stuff down. To the point where now if you search my name on TikTok, it's just a bunch of people attacking me, a bunch of these DemTalk people especially, because all my accounts have been taken down, so all my response videos have been taken down. So it's like they've created an echo chamber where all you can hear is people shitting on Midwestern Marx, and you can't hear Midwestern Marx defend themselves because all those videos have been stripped from the internet. So that's kind of how it works, where these real accounts will point, these real accounts, but accounts that might be working directly with the Democratic Party, point people, or at various NGOs, point people towards an account that they don't like, and then real people, as well as bots, go attack that account they don't like. And TikTok recently removed 30,000 accounts that they said were spreading Russian propaganda, which, of course, at this point, we know means just telling the truth about the conflict in Ukraine. So TikTok is also helping to suppress and strip the app of any alternative narratives, any alternative voices. So it makes it much, much easier for these DemTalk people to get anyone they want banned. Sam Dixon, thank you for the $5 super chat. After the 1620 elections, I like what Marianne Williamson says, but I can't help but feel she's going to be the biggest knife in the back. Yeah. That interview she did with RBN did not instill confidence in me, where she was talking about how we need to fund Israel and how she supports a two-state solution, basically giving a Zionist line on Israel and just tiptoeing around a bunch of other policies that would help the working class. So not huge on the Marianne Williamson train, but this is still interesting that she got suppressed by DemTalk.
Absolutely. And this actually, even before this, all of a sudden, so TikTok was being flooded organically with pro-Marianne content, where they were just like, she has her official account, which is doing very well and has, I think, close to 500,000 followers at this point.
Already? Jesus.
And they haven't gone crazy.
And that's what it is. These things blow up organically because people are desperate, like I said, for revolutionary education and anti-capitalism. So now the State Department, the CIA, and all the usual actors are scrambling to try and suppress all this information that's being shared on TikTok, all this truth that's being shared on TikTok. So, of course, you have these goons in Washington threatening to ban TikTok, claiming that TikTok is run by the Communist Party of China. These morons like Dan Crenshaw claiming that the Singaporean CEO of TikTok is an agent of the Communist Party, when in reality, the whole app is now run by State Department officials. And I had a first-hand view of this, a first-person perspective of this. I saw it as soon as it started happening. So what happened was Trump threatened to ban TikTok. Before this, I would blow up on TikTok. I'd have a viral video every day, a video with over 10,000 views every day. This is when we had almost 400,000 followers on TikTok. Pretty much anything I posted that was a good video, people would like it, they would share it, and it would get views. But then Project Texas started. So Trump threatened to ban TikTok, but instead of banning it, management of TikTok's US-based data was handed over to a Texas-based company called Oracle, who's notorious for their connections to the State Department and the CIA. So they said, we are going to ban this app in America unless you hand over management of TikTok's data to this US-based, CIA-based company. And that is when our first account got banned. So they just took this account with almost 400,000 followers that we had worked really, really hard to build up, took it down, took down years of content that we had worked on, just deleted it, and said that they were getting rid of all the Russian bots on their app because, you know, apparently I'm a bot paid for by Putin. I always thought I was a human being who's lived my entire life in the United States, but I guess I'm a bot now. So it's just ridiculous. As the U.S. State Department is claiming that this app is run by China, they're literally forcing the app to hand over management to the U.S. State Department. So after the app was handed over to Oracle, because of the wishes of the U.S. government, TikTok hired a bunch of former national security agents and NATO employees to manage their content. And that's when they removed 30,000 bot accounts. So when I appeal a video at TikTok, when a bunch of these Dem-Talk people, these Democrats who mass reported Marianne Williamson, when they mass report one of my videos and it gets taken down, I appeal it. And guess who reviews that appeal? NATO operatives, State Department operatives, literal CIA operatives who are working for TikTok in positions of content management. And then they want to claim that this app is controlled by the Communist Party of China. When this app was controlled by China, it didn't suck. When this app was controlled by China, nobody was getting censored. People didn't start getting censored until Project Texas started, until you handed over management of TikTok to the U.S. State Department. China was protecting free speech more than the U.S. So it's just infuriating that we've built up hundreds and hundreds of thousands of followers, put hours and hours into revolutionary education, and the State Department just took it away, and then they're going to claim that this app is controlled by China as they're suppressing any anti-capitalist revolutionary content. It's disgusting. These people are disgusting liars. I can't imagine how these NATO operatives and CIA operatives and State Department operatives who are suppressing revolutionary content and truthful content on TikTok sleep at night. And even still, these idiots can't suppress us, right? Like our newest TikTok account, which is over 20,000 followers, the 7th account that we've had over 20,000 followers, because they can never suppress us for good. It just got a strike. It just got a content warning. So they're threatening to ban us again because of a video I did talking about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, the uprising against Nazism and fascism, the first Jewish-led uprising. Because I talked about that and the role of communists in it, they're threatening to ban our account again, right? But I just had a video get 500,000 views about the war in Ukraine, telling the truth about the war in Ukraine. So because of the way the algorithm works, they can suppress, and it does have an effect, right? But if I just keep making accounts and keep posting, the videos still blow up. They can't fully suppress it. So this is why the State Department's still freaking out, why they're still threatening to ban TikTok, why they're still terrified of this algorithm. Because no matter how many times they ban and suppress people like us, we come back and continue to go viral and continue to be a thorn in their side. So what we're going to see is increasing crackdowns, more hiring of CIA operatives, more threats from the government to ban TikTok, more projection towards China, claiming that China's in control of the app. The Chinese government's in control of the app, which it's pure projection, just like every U.S. State Department line. Pretty much anything that the U.S. accuses China or Russia or Iran or Venezuela or Cuba of doing, and anything that they call authoritarianism, is pretty much just something that the U.S. is doing. that they want to project on another country. And this is a perfect example. They're banning people from TikTok every day and going, China, stop banning people from TikTok. China, stop controlling the flow of information on TikTok. As we control the flow of information on TikTok. It's wild. What's your Discord server called? You got to go to the Midwestern Marx link tree. I'll put it in the chat here. But I just updated the Discord link on Linktree, so this should work. If it doesn't, I'll be quite upset. I'll cry, actually. But there should be a link here. So, yeah, very interesting stuff there with Marianne Williamson getting banned. I'm glad the Social Democrats feel my pain. I'm glad people are finally starting to open their eyes to the blatant censorship on TikTok. Mint Press News, who published that article, they haven't even been allowed to have a TikTok account. Every time they have a TikTok account, they can only get 1 view max, and then eventually their account gets banned for misinformation. You literally can't do journalism on the app without these vultures taking it down. And it just goes to show that the truth is on our side. They wouldn't have to suppress us if the truth wasn't on our side, y'all. And that's just what it is.
Go take a look.
All right. Next video. Let's get into our main course for today. Our main topic of the day. Libertarian socialism. Libertarian socialism. What does it mean? Is there any overlap between libertarianism and socialism? Usually people just say, I'm a libertarian socialist because I support socialism without authoritarianism, without government intervention. And this is not Marxist-Leninist. Read the book State and Revolution. The state needs to be seized by the working class and used to transfer power into the hands of the workers from the capitalists. There's going to be no way to do that without using the government at all. And if you allow the capitalists to continually control the government and the armed bodies of the state, like the police and military, they're going to kill you for trying to organize against capitalism or trying to overthrow capitalism. So there needs to be some sort of seizure of power of the government. That's the Marxist perspective, the dictatorship of the proletariat. But there are a lot of people who have been supporting this libertarian socialist idea because it sounds good, right? It sounds good on face value. A lot of people like socialism, but they think the USSR and China were the most evil dictatorial hellscapes in the history of humanity. So that prevents a lot of people from accepting socialism. But what if we're libertarian socialists, right? What if we're socialists, but we want small government? I'm going to try and use the debate between Voosh and Charlie Kirk to explain the problem with that idea and the difference in a liberal's view of socialism, or liberal socialism, which is basically what libertarian socialism is in this context, versus Marxist scientific socialism.
Now, it's funny, I feel like our roles are being reversed a little bit here.
Isn't that interesting?
The common good isn't something I appeal to. For me, the value I want to maximize...
No, I just appeal to the good.
The good, sure.
Because two different things.
Is freedom. That's what I care about most. And that's what libertarian socialism is about. There are many types of freedoms, positive and negative. If I might indulge very briefly, is a man thrown to a lawless desert without food, water, or clothing free? Really asking.
So, probably no.
I agree. He's free to die.
But that's an extreme example,
Sure.
not applicable in modern wealthy America.
No,
or
but-
any Western nation.
But it's a philosophical base.
It's also a Rousseauian argument. Man's born free and he, spends the rest of his life in chains. It's
Right.
just
So I actually agree with Charlie Kirk here, and he's right that it's a Rousseauian argument, not really a socialist or dialectical materialist argument. They're arguing really for the state of nature, right? That there's this state of nature that man exists in when man first comes to exist, where there's no authority inflicted upon him, so man is completely free. And then the question is, how do we best achieve freedom, or best achieve this state of nature today in a modern economy, in a modern society? So this is usually not, like I said, a socialist or dialectical materialist argument, because we argue as Marxists, which Vaush claims to be a Marxist, that freedom is freedom from material want. So as material production advances and develops and becomes more powerful, freedom can advance because we can better produce the material things that we need to survive, our means of subsistence. But only after the relations of production from an old and outdated mode of production burst asunder can a new social organization come about. So advancements in production, advancements in how humans produce, advancements in technology eventually lead the relations of production that exist to become outdated, like when feudalism became outdated and was replaced with capitalism, and the relations of production burst or change or are overthrown in a revolution and are replaced with new ones. So the state of nature, this idea that there's just some abstract blank state of human nature where humans are absolutely free, doesn't make any sense to a Marxist. That state of nature never existed because humans have always been in this progression in terms of how we appropriate things from nature, this dialectical progression. Production has always been advancing, leading to changes in society. And this starts with the beginning of human societies, right? Marx and Engels believed that the transition from ape to man happened because of labor, because eventually some of the apes learned how to use tools to appropriate things from nature. They learned how to cooperate with each other to appropriate things from nature and eventually form themselves into human societies, which developed to the point that we're at today. So production was always in a state of development, right? Humans have always needed to get things from nature, appropriate things from nature in order to survive. The way that we do this and the power that we have to do this has always been evolving, right? It's never been this stagnant, abstract state of human nature ever. It's in a constant dialectical progression. And this is why there's no freedom in the abstract, right? Freedom is relative freedom, freedom to produce. Or like under capitalism, we produce enough to give everybody material freedom, freedom from want. But the surplus of society is appropriated by a handful of capitalists. So we have lots of people who starve, lots of people who go without homes because of the way that the relations of production are organized. And, you know, what's freedom for a capitalist isn't necessarily freedom for a worker, right? So freedom is always relative and based on the mode of production, based on the material conditions, based on, you know, freedom for who? Like Lenin's famous quote, a Marxist never forget, or I mean, liberals love to speak of freedom, but a Marxist never forgets to ask freedom for which class, right? Here, Vush is arguing for this abstract state of freedom based on the state of nature. Not a Marxist argument, not a dialectical materialist argument, a Rousseauian argument, as Charlie Kirk points out. And I mean, there's a lot of people who argued for the state of nature in Western political thought. This is the stuff I had to read in undergrad, actually. But it's interesting to read the foundational American political thought. And also, this is very basic political theory, though. So interesting to see Marx, who calls himself interesting to see Vush, who calls himself a dialectical materialist and a Marxist, argue from a liberal Rousseauian perspective. Because guess what? He's actually just a liberal or a neoliberal. Thank you, I Eat Paste and Samuel Black, for becoming YouTube members. Much love. Y'all will be getting the Purity Fetish and the Crisis of Western Marxism soon. Thank you for your financial support. Couldn't do it without you. So yeah, let's move on here.
Anti-commercial in nature.
Well, no, but it's a base philosophical argument because it's true. They're lawless. There's nothing preventing him from doing anything in that environment, but he has no ability to act on his desires.
But do you know what he does have? Consciousness.
Well, sure.
That's a natural rights doctrine that I will defend.
Well, I mean, I like consciousness too. The only point that I'm getting at is when it comes to people's freedom and the ability for people to protect their freedom, this is what I care about. It's what Marx cared about. If you actually read what he wrote, and
I've read Das Kapital, I've read the manifesto. Then guess what? He was right about.
Have you though, Charlie? How many volumes, bro? How many volumes, bro? You've read Das Kapital? Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3? You know you don't get the full argument unless you read all 3 volumes, right? When did you read those? Also, I love how Vush is saying that this is what Marx thought as he's making like a John Locke or Jean-Jacques Rousseau type liberal argument that was used to found liberal societies. It's like Vaush said once, after claiming that he's read all the theories, read all the Lenin and Mao. He said that Marxism is an extension of liberalism, not a critique of liberalism. So, liberalism claims to bring people freedom, but it doesn't. Marxism actually creates freedom in the abstract for everyone. No, Marx didn't believe in abstract freedom. He believed in dialectical progression based on the progression of production and how humans appropriate from nature.
About some things. Then but not everything. He didn't talk really wrong about equality. He didn't write on equality. He wrote on freedom because he believed that society was a very complex, interlocking network of systems that in some ways liberated men and in other ways enslaved them.
But do you know what he got wrong? He got wrong that sometimes people can be free for other devices that they are not able to regulate. They can be free not from alcoholism, drug addiction, some sort of any other sort of perverse addiction. The idea of freedom is a very libertarian.
But I agree with that, though.
So Charlie Kirk is right that Marx didn't, he's wrong because Marx actually understood what he said, right? Marx understood that freedom is relative. There's no freedom in the abstract. So Marx criticized prostitution and the fact that prostitution would flood in anytime capitalism came to a country, or anywhere capitalism took hold, prostitution would follow. Drug addiction would follow. Homelessness would follow. This is the lumpen proletariat who becomes the most degraded and oppressed class, or maybe not oppressed, but one of the most degraded classes within a capitalist system. So Marx was against these things like prostitution and drug addiction and didn't see them as freedoms because there is no freedom in the abstract, right? Marx didn't believe that you should just be allowed, society is best, society is socialist when people are just allowed to do whatever they want, right? When people are allowed to just play video games and do drugs all day, right? That's not what socialism was. There's actually this book called Freedom Through Discipline, or Discipline Equals Freedom. And it's by this guy, Jocko Willink, who's like a Navy SEAL or one of these motivational guys. And I disagree with almost everything he says, obviously. But what he's identified in that book is the dialectical relationship between personal discipline and freedom, right? You need some sort of personal discipline. You need to be able to control yourself if you want to actually have freedom. If you want to, you need to be in control of your actions, because if you aren't, and you just do a bunch of drugs, you're going to get addicted, and that's going to lead to almost no freedom, right? So this, again, is why we need to look at things dialectically and not see freedom as this thing in the abstract. But Charlie Kirk is saying that Marx didn't understand this. Marx believed in freedom in the abstract because that's what Vaush is arguing for, and that's wrong. Marx would disagree with both of these guys. But Vaush is misconstruing Marxism to however many thousands of people watch this. So that's why we're debunking it now. Freedom is always relative, right? Freedom is always relative. The only way that Marx and Engels really described freedom is freedom from material want, right? Freedom, like the working class right now, produces the means of subsistence, produces the things that we need to survive, but they don't have access to the products of their labor. They're only paid a tiny fraction of the value that their labor produces in wages so that they can buy back the product, right? And freedom is when the entire working class works collectively to produce the means of subsistence, and we all have access to it. But this doesn't mean, like I said, that everybody just has freedom to do drugs all day, right? Or individualistic bourgeois freedoms. What Charlie Kirk is describing is what Marx would call bourgeois freedoms. And he never preached freedom in the abstract. Vaush is wrong and Charlie's wrong.
No, I know you do.
Go figure.
The greatest society.
I say that. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just the greatest society is one where a man is born and there are as few things as possible preventing him from doing whatever he wants for the rest of his life.
I totally disagree.
So long as, of course, he doesn't deprive others of the ability to do the same.
So there you go. He sees everything through the lens of individual bourgeois freedom. The right to do whatever you want means a happy or ideal society. That's libertarian socialism for Vaush. And that is not the Marxist concept of socialism, right? Socialism doesn't necessarily mean you get to do whatever you want, right? An ideal society, I guess, or a socialist society is one that's based in community, one that's based in helping others, right? One that doesn't necessarily mean everybody, like I said, is doing drugs and playing video games all day because that's what they want to do, because that's what they want to do individually, right? We want to build a society where everybody feels like contributing and everybody feels like they're supported, right? Where when you go to work, when you labor, you know that your labor is going to go to benefit the collective good. And that gives you the incentive to labor. That makes your labor more worthwhile because you know that you're going to share in the products of your labor. You're not alienated from it like under capitalism, where everything that you produce is appropriated by a capitalist, right? So this is increasing freedom by having a society run by the workers for the workers, getting rid of class on class exploitation, and alleviating freedom or desire for material needs, right? Freedom from want. By increasing the productive forces, but it's still not just producing freedom in the abstract or freedom to do whatever you want as an individual. The rest of society be damned. So then this shows why freedom is only relative and why freedom in the abstract is not an ideal of Marxists or socialists, scientific socialists. It never has been. And these libertarian socialists like Voosh are trying to make it an ideal of Marxists or claim that this was an ideal that Marx had. But this just shows that Voosh's lens of analysis, his framework of analysis, is a liberal framework, right? He calls it libertarian socialism, but it's liberalism. I want to maximize freedom for the individual, right? I want to let the individual do whatever he wants, as long as that doesn't mean screwing over someone else. Right? That's not scientific socialism. That's not the dialectical progression of society towards a socialist society, towards a more collective society. That's just liberalism and liberal idealism.
So I think that's a miserable society. Freedom? No, that's not freedom. That's licentiousness or degeneracy. That's chaos.
What is degeneracy? I like men.
How about pedophilia?
Okay, well,
So he's right here. If you take Vauch's argument to its logical conclusion, right, this is what you can justify. Well, if they're consenting, right, the individual should be able to do what he wants. So if the child consents and their parents consent, pedophilia is okay. We got to maximize individual freedom as long as all the individuals are consenting, right? We don't need any collective laws, collectively determined laws. Or collectively determined values or traditions or whatever in society. It's ultimately a society based on individualism that Voosh is arguing for. And if you take that to its logical conclusion, you can take it to this point, and say that he's arguing for pedophilia. And again, that's not what scientific socialism is. Scientific socialism is about collective struggle to create a collective society where we all work together for each other, where we all protect and care for each other's children. And support each other in the raising of children, not a society where individuals who lean towards pedophilia have the freedom to do that if they can find someone to consent to it, right? That's a horrible society, as Charlie Kirk says. That's a dystopian society based on just individualism and individual freedoms taken to the utmost degree, which is not what Marxism is about. So here's where I actually stopped watching, but we can watch for a little longer if people are interested. But this is why political philosophy is great. And this is why we preach reading theory and why reading theory is so important, because it helps you get to the roots or the core or the basis of what people believe, right? By listening to Voosh talk about what he thinks Marxism is and how he thinks Marxism is freedom for the individual, freedom in the abstract, based on the state of nature, you realize that he's just a liberal, right? He's arguing the same thing that liberal theorists hundreds of years ago would argue. All of his arguments, all of his framework of analysis, his lens of analysis lines up with like Rousseau and a lot of other liberal thinkers. And his goal for society, maximizing freedom for the individual, is a liberal goal. It's a liberal ideal. So that's why he always tends to be liberal in his political positions, right? Because he supports freedom for the individual over things like national sovereignty, over things like the collective struggle for socialism. So because of this, Every time NATO or the US State Department wants to overthrow or bomb some other country, all they say is that country is infringing on individual freedoms, right? That country has anti-LGBTQ laws. That country is authoritarian. They're cracking down on freedom of speech. They're cracking down on freedoms for the individual. We're going to bomb the crap out of them like Yugoslavia in 1999. And then Vush goes, oh, yes, go get them, NATO. Go protect our individual freedoms around the world. I don't care about national sovereignty, right? I don't care about the Iranian people's right to run their own government and decide what kind of government they have. And I don't think that we should stay out of that as Americans. Their government that they decided upon is Islamic and not based on individual freedoms. Therefore, I support sanctioning the crap out of them, right? He'll place individual freedoms over collective sovereignty. And therefore, he supports neoliberal imperialism every single time. And you can trace that all the way back to his framework of analysis, his theoretical base, right? If you support individual freedoms over anything, all that NATO and the US State Department have to tell you is that we're bombing this country to protect individual freedoms because they're authoritarian, and you'll go right along with it. As will Zizek, and as will the thousands of people who listen to you and think that you're Marxist and think that you're socialist when you're not. You're neolibs in every single way. So yeah, that was interesting. That's what I think of libertarian socialism. I think ultimately it falls into liberalism. I know that Haas of Infrared has been calling himself, I think, like a libertarian socialist lately. I'll have to maybe check out his video one day. I guarantee you he defends it better than Vaush because Haas actually has an understanding of Marxism. He's actually taken the time to read some Marx before calling himself a Marxist and going on YouTube and claiming that he's read everything that Lenin and Mao ever wrote, like Vush has. The dude's also a narcissist and a pathological liar, which is, I mean, that makes sense. Like these pro-State Department pundits, these pro-State Department propagandists, it makes sense that a lot of them would be narcissists and pathological liars. But like if you've ever dealt with a narcissist in your personal life who just thinks everything they do is awesome and everything that's in their interest is awesome and anything else is horrible, you learn to spot narcissism really easily, really quickly. And I very much think that Bush is a narcissist. Got a dip. Please show the Libertarian Toaster license clip to show how much of a clown show these libertarians are. I think you meant to say show it. Thank you so much, Sam Dixon. Thank you for being a YouTube member. Thank you to all the other people who became YouTube members during that segment. Really, really appreciate that. Appreciate the long-term support. We will get you the the purity fetish and the crisis of Western Marxism soon, as a gift to you for your financial support. That is the reason we're able to do what we do over here at Midwestern Marx, is the reason that our project has continued to grow. It's all because of supporters like y'all, and I know you're all working class people, getting exploited, getting paid wages that are far less than the value of what you produce and the surplus value that your boss takes home. So any little fraction of those wages that you want to give to Midwestern Marx to further revolutionary education, we're greatly appreciative of it. We understand how much of a sacrifice it is for working class people to give us that kind of support. And that's why we're so appreciative, I guess. So yeah. Libertarian debate, driver's license. So this is the clip that we play every time that we talk about libertarians, because this just sums up libertarianism in a clip. Last time, play us some guitar. I will in a bit. Last time I played the 23-second clip of the libertarian debates, but this time I'm going to play the 2-minute and 50-second clip because it's worth watching the whole thing. The longer clip is even better.
Mr. Peterson.
That they hold for themselves every year. This one had John McAfee in it, I believe, who was like the craziest capitalist to ever live. The guy who invented, or was the owner of McAfee Privacy Services and like antivirus software, who like got caught on an island paying women to like poop in his mouth. I swear to God, this is like, look, you can look it up. He was in this debate. He ran for president as a libertarian, I guess. So love your content, Eddie. Keep it up. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you so much for the super chat. We will keep it up. Much love. And thank you so much, SG, for the super sticker. Getting all kinds of super stickers, super chats today. Everything I said about the super chatters earlier, I second that. Copy and paste it again. Couldn't do what we do without you guys. Appreciate you so much. Much love.
I have a feeling I know how this answer is going to be. Should someone have to have a government-issued license to drive a car?
Hell no.
Dr. Feldman.
A car is like a gun or anything else. As long as you're using it right and not using it to hurt other people, you should have a right to use it. A license and a permit is just another way to get some money and inconvenience to.
Look how this guy like sighs. Like he knows that this question itself kind of debunks the whole libertarian argument, right? Like no government intervention, just personal freedom, freedom in the abstract, like what we were just talking about with Voosh. Right. So therefore, you shouldn't even need a driver's license. You should just have the freedom to drive. It doesn't make any sense. You're going to take away other people's freedom on the road because you're going to have accidents and no regulation of the roads. So this question itself debunks the whole libertarian ideology. The idea that there is some kind of freedom in the abstract and that by just maximizing individuals' freedoms to do whatever the hell they want, even if it's super harmful to themselves or society, it's not a good idea. It's not the way to maximize freedom. The way to maximize freedom is through collective struggle of the working class and ameliorating exploitation. This guy's just like, and then he goes into his answer. My whole ideology has been debunked. Well, here's why the government's bad.
A car is like a gun or anything else. As long as you're using it right and not using it to hurt other people, you should have a right to use it. A license and a permit is just another way to get some money and inconvenience to people.
Mr. McAfee.
I don't think licenses are required. However, if you are under 16 and your parents say you can drive and you haven't done it before, you should put a flashing pink light on your roof at least so we can get out of your way. But that at the most.
So there's the guy. There's the legend himself. Computer software company founder John McAfee.
Mr. Perry.
The government requires licenses for far too many things. The government requires licenses for people to broadcast radio. The government requires licenses to get married. They require a license to drive. What's next? Requiring a license to make toast in your own damn toaster? Absolutely not.
Oh, that guy's so awesome. Absolutely not. Why would you even ask me such a ridiculous question? You think that I support the government preventing 4-year-olds from driving cars? Hell no. This country's about freedom. Freedom for toddlers to drive.
Governor?
I think government has a basic responsibility to protect us against individuals, groups, corporations, foreign governments that would do us harm. In that context, a license to drive, I'd like to see some competency exhibited by people before they drive.
Boo! How dare you say something that any rational human being would agree with?
You suck! You suck! You suck!
As governor of New Mexico, I vetoed a whole lot of bills. I vetoed the haircutting license. I vetoed all sorts of licensing, but license to drive? I mean, you could, arguably, you could have an insurance requirement, I guess, that then the insurance company would determine. I mean, you got people that are blind that would.
Yeah, let's give it over to the insurance companies because they've always shown and proven to do things so well and things so rationally, and they never put their own profit incentive over the needs of society and the needs of their customers. Like, this is what's so ridiculous about libertarians. Let's get rid of the government and hand everything over to the insurance industry. Oh, you mean the most exploitative mafia-style ripoff industry ever invented? Yeah, let's give everything over to those corporations. I'm sure they'll look out for the freedom of regular people. But also, I'm pretty upset that Gary Johnson got rid of those haircutting licenses. You should need a license to give a haircut. Have you ever gone to Great Clips or Supercuts? If you have, you know what I'm talking about. Those people, like, they clearly have no haircutting license, and they do you dirty every time. No offense to those workers. I still think they should get organized, but I've gotten some bad haircuts from Great Clips and Supercuts, man.
Be on the road, I think, that would actually continue to drive until they hurt somebody. I think.
Gentlemen, we have come to the end of the question and answer portion of the debate.
Oh, they're so
we
mad.
now have 60 seconds to make a closing argument. Since Mr. McAfee went first, Mr. Perry.
That's the end of the debate. What a lineup, too. You got that Daryl Perry guy, the guy who says, hell no. John McAfee. And here's a Reddit post about John McAfee. Multiple women claim John McAfee would have them take dumps in his mouth from a hammock. One of my old wrestling coaches told me about this. I'm like, that can't be real. But it's real. I mean, according to these women. So, yeah, John McAfee is a strange guy. Maybe that's just a government psyop, right? Maybe those women are plants, and they did it to ruin John McAfee's
You may go first.
presidential campaign. But I don't know. It's still pretty wild. All right, let me thank our YouTube members and our Patreon supporters real quick. Oh, thank you, GQ. Really appreciate the $5 super chat. Really, really do. Do you know about the Maoist Naxalites in India? They are a massive force in the region. No, I am not very familiar with Indian politics, actually. Maybe I'll have to look into that. Thank you a ton for the super chat. And I will research Indian Maoists for the next stream for sure. India is a big country, huge population right next to China. And like Vijay Prashad says, if you look at the level of poverty in India, they have as many people living in extreme poverty as people that China has brought out of poverty through their poverty alleviation programs. So if you're looking at that as an Indian citizen, it's like, dang, we should move towards socialism. There's a lot of sentiment like that in India, a lot of poverty in India, obviously. So it's an interesting country to follow and see what direction they're moving. So I should know more about it. All right, so let's read off our $10 YouTube members. Nam Trin, Nadia Yvette Chambers, Apple iCat Pro Max, I Eat Paste, Charakuno, Chris Adam, Eric5335, Nil, Samuel Black, Shauna Jana, RIP Sharina Buakla, Ryan, Larek Molesh, Kapapan Ahachakawu, Bull Thoughts, Don Hammonds, Lane 2006, Adi Kunju, Alex, Nagik, Sellerdorp, AJ, Susan Cox, Len Blavatnik, Shecky Shania, Britt Anders, Mancomb, Mixed Lives Matter, YHWH, MMT, Chaparrito y Picante, Yimmy No, Seta Longate, Raj Minaj, Treya, Les Cassawaries, Turbana, Isaac, Kate Grenade, Lillian Markowicz, Ware Pilgrim, Pedamio, Joseph George, Bazzi, Pacheco Roan, Zagaloaz Zellinger, Cobra Commander, Fido K, Yup Pensong, Christopher Romero, Working Class Solidarity, Sam Dixon, Trevor Kister, Comrade Nicto, Alexander Maida, Pistriani, Christopher Bustle, Duck Hash Browns, Insomniac 2007, ILL State Fishing, and Dustin Schlesinger. Holy cow, we've got a lot of YouTube members now. Thank you to all those YouTube members for the consistent financial support. Really appreciate that. We'll be getting you the new audio or the new ebook soon. And then all of our $10 Patreon supporters at patreon.com/MidwesternMarks. Thank you to you all, starting with A. Coco, Amazeline, Andrew Tibbetts, Anna Williams, Ariel, Ayo Hillary, Benjamin Calvett, Brady, Bryce Raffa, Burnt Reynolds, Cass, Sellerdorp, Christian Cook, Christina Sandage, Christopher Stombaugh, CJ, Cody, David Burney, David Rock, Debbie Ho, DRRD, Elliot Cook, Gabe Glazer, Galactic Beyond, Gilly Trice, Glenn Goldman, Hobie Huckle, Jorge, Hakon Klepe Norman, Ian Snyder, Raj Rafiq, Isaac Cohen, Jack Kelleher, Jeremy Bishop, Johnny.it, Joseph Hoffer, Joseph Machado, Julie P67, Kevin Durham Sr., Christopher Bustle, Kyle Press, Loaf of Kropotkin, Lucas Meadows, Marvin Roman, Mash Dancers, Max Maddox, Naomi, Philip Gendralt, Pranav Sinha, Semi-Anonymous. Going to the next page. Silas James, SJ Mage, The Davy, Tiva, Tom, Uncle Joey, Vanguard Party Animal, Victorio R, Vince Barbosa, Wit, Xenon29, aka Moon Factor, Zachary Quesenberry, and that's it for our $10 Patreon supporters. So thank you all so much. Giving you producer credits, because what we do wouldn't be possible without you, as I've said a million times. Really appreciate you. I really appreciate the Twitch subscribers as well. Although I haven't figured out how to read those off yet. Yeah. Like the stream, y'all. Spread the word. Definitely do it. I assume this is Carlos or Noah commenting. We will be live at 12:15 Central Time interviewing Boris Differ, the Secretary of International Relations, for the poll of communist revival in France on the intensifying class struggles in France. Absolutely. So I'm going to dip out here soon as we've got an interview coming up. But stay tuned. Got another great interview. Yesterday, Carlos published the awesome interview with John Bellamy Foster, Marxist ecologist. So always hitting you with the interviews as well as the news and politics shows. But for now, I'm going to head out. So thank you all for the constant support. Be sure to organize your workplace, organize your communities, keep reading theory, and we'll see you on the next Eddie Liger Power Hour. Thank you, everyone. Solidarity. Enjoy the interview.